I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. Dun, dun. Oh, hold on, sorry, wrong thing, wrong. Oh hi. So, anyways, welcome to episode 208 of the Westmarch Workshop. We're in the alpha now, and we've got a lot to talk about. As you probably have heard, the Diablo Alpha has gone through, or the Diablo Immortal Alpha, to be specific, has started, and we've got quite a bit of additional content that's going through and has been tested this past week. I've been streaming a little bit. If you follow me over on my personal channel, twitch.tv/Neinball, and I've been going through, collecting some feedback, getting some thoughts, some ideas, but I am excited. I am so hyped. They have added so much, and I'm finally going through and getting the chance to talk about it, like in a more concise format than just kind of spitballing, free-flowing thoughts during the streams, or just like a couple of tweets here and there. But as we go through and get into the episode proper, obviously we're going to be talking a lot about the Diablo Immortal Alpha, the new zones, the new class, some of my just general thoughts and feedback on everything that we've had going on in the alpha. We would do ourselves a disservice to go and talk about the cycle of Strife and wanting to be the best that there is, hence the intro, all cringe forgiven, sorry. And then we'll go through and we will, of course, cap out the episode with some talk of some of the new lore that's being introduced for Diablo Immortal, as it sets up the story and possibly some larger things coming with the world of Diablo, or, Sanctuary in general. But, I don't even know where to begin. But, as you probably know by now, last week the Diablo Immortal Alpha started. They again are going through and having a select invite over in Australia, as well as, content creators, streamers, podcasters, and people from around the internet have been going through and being invited over the past week to get people into the alpha. And this one is far more open than what the previous one is. Even though it is still a closed alpha, they're inviting a lot of people. A lot of people. We're still not quite at beta numbers, but the reasoning for this is they've added in their new PvP feature, the Cycle of Strife, which pits a lot of people against one another. Now, this is some kind of large-scale PvP battles and such, where there's going to be constant 8v8s and other things of that nature, but it also requires a lot of PvE grind in order to go and get up to that level. And I will save the talk for the Cycle of Strife until later on in the episode, but yeah, the Crusader was added in. I feel remiss just because I wasn't able to talk a lot about the previous alpha, because that launched the technical alpha, as this one is the closed alpha. The technical alpha launched while the stream was on hiatus back in December. And so I didn't get a chance to share a lot of my thoughts live and such. So this one, I'm taking the opportunity to go through and do that. And we also have an idea that this one is going to be lasting a bit longer than the technical alpha. We're not sure. They didn't give us a set time frame, but the previous one ran for 2 weeks. And so I imagine maybe this one will run for, I don't know, a month, maybe a little bit more than that. But the in addition to just having some features, we've got the new class, the Crusader. We have 2 new zones. We get to go through to Mount Xavian, which is up in the Tamoy Mountains near Yvgarad, where the monks call home. And we also get to visit the Frozen Tundra, which is on the slopes of Mount Arayat near the ruins of Shesharon. So, one is an area that we've seen before, kind of reimagined, and then another one is a whole new area, which is one of my favorite things in Immortal, is going and exploring all these places that we've maybe only have heard of, let alone ever being able to see. In the Demon Hunter Wizard the monk and the barbarian all return, and we now have the crusader. I kind of was hoping that there'd be the necromancer would be introduced, but obviously that one we're kind of have to wait a little bit longer. They did mention at BlizzCon Online that they would be doing it this route, that they would only be introducing one new class for like the next round of testing. Excuse me, and that there would still be multiple rounds of testing. So this isn't even it. And they also increased the level cap from 45 to 55. So we're getting closer to the end game, which I would like to point out that last week was the anniversary of Avengers Endgame, so it's also slightly the Easter egg for we're in the end game now is the show title. Anyways, no one cares. I know no one cares, but yeah, man, this game is so good. And it's like one of those ones, it's really hard to just go through and tell people, like, anybody can say that the game is good, but if you don't get your hands on it, you'll never really know just how fun the game can be. Before I think like terms like Diablo 3.5, or this feels like what maybe like the next Diablo 3 expansion would have been, have been thrown around. But now with like the new features that are there, as well as the refinement of features that we got in the technical alpha, this isn't like Diablo 3.5. Like, this is Diablo 3 2. This isn't like an expansion. This is like a sequel. This takes kind of a lot of the core of Diablo 3 and just changes it around to large degrees to just make things work, make them better. So like some instances for that is like legendaries. One of the big things for Diablo 3 once we got into Reaper of Souls was legendaries were supposed to be like build definers, that they would change up how your skills functioned in order to go and make it so that way you wanted to like use this particular skill instead of another. But then that kind of went down the rabbit hole of just infinitely scaling damage numbers and such. But they went back to that core concept for Immortal when they were going through and making the legendary items. And so now, yeah, some do increase the damage, but you're talking like some of the legendaries out there that just, this skill does increase damage. It's like 10%. It's like this skill now does 10% increased damage. It's not anything big, not anything extravagant or anything along those lines. The ones that get interesting are, ones that just fundamentally change the way that the skill works. And some of those ones, you've got like the Crusader skill, Holy Banner, which when you drop, you give an aura of 100% crit chance, but it drops everybody's critical strike damage and then increases it, by whatever you overcap. So if you have 30% crit chance already and it gives you the 100, instead of giving you 130% crit chance, it increases your crit damage by 30%. So you go to 180 instead of 150. There's, a legendary that turns it into a giant obelisk that shoots a laser beam at mobs. So it's that's kind of like the idea of the things that it does. Or you have shield throw, which there's a whole bunch of legendaries that modify shield throw. The base skill, you kind of like throw it out and it comes back to you all Captain America style. There's one that will then cause it to bounce in between mobs. There's one where you throw it and it just spins in place. There's one that then turns it into kind of like a blessed hammer, where it just circles around you in an ever bigger arc. And it's one of those ones where you can look at it and see that they've taken aspects or things, since it doesn't have as many skills in Immortal as Diablo 3 does. It takes some of the essence of a lot of those abilities and it breaks it down with the legendaries, so that way you can get multiple effects. If there is a particular build, for a class in Diablo 3, of course barring the Witch Doctor, which is not appearing in the game, though they kind of do. I'll get to that one later. There's a lot of things that the legendaries do to try and build out play styles for you. And so there's actually a lot of potential in what you can actually stat out your character, how you want to build them, what skills you want to focus on. And it's a lot of fun because every time that you get a new legendary, you are legit excited to go and try it. Because you want to see, like, what does this do? How does this change up my class? We're also in that point where everything is new and nothing is known, so everything is a test. Everything is just, going going on new ground. Obviously, everybody is always trying to define what the meta is, and there are some people that are pushing like particular meta builds, but there's so little testing. Like, the game hasn't, or I guess the game literally has only been out for like a week and an hour now, as of the recording of the show. There's a lot of unknowns. Not to mention, like, I've been going through and grinding, as hard as I can, since last week. I probably have gotten close to full-time jobbing it. So I probably have put in close to 40 hours into the game, maybe a little bit more. I haven't really been keeping too great a track of it, but it's just I'll be at work and it's like, oh well, this movie is ingesting. I've got to wait 40 minutes. I'm gonna knock out a couple dungeons. I'm waiting for this projector to update. I'll just go through and let's do a bounty or two. It's anytime I can sneak into my phone, it's just trying to get like one more run, a little bit more XP, get a couple more enchanted dust. It's great. It's beautiful because it's like, oh, I'm literally just seconds away from getting like an authentic Diablo experience. And it's also refreshing because in certain aspects it feels like Diablo 3, because there's a couple of like rift type systems in there, and then there's the bounties. So these bounties I feel are a lot better than the implementation of bounties in Diablo 3. Like I said, it's like they take core concepts and then just improve upon them. But then you also have things like dungeons, and you actually have like world quests. Not like the World of Warcraft world quests, but you'll just be going through a zone and then all of a sudden like new challenge appears. It's like survive the ambush, and a whole bunch of mobs like just kind of like come out and ambush you. Or you'll come across a soldier on the side of the road, and it's like I've been ambushed and my squad's been killed. I need you to find me some weapons, because I just ran and left mine. And so there's a whole bunch of like little tiny things that are dispersed throughout the entire game, and they all feel really rewarding because of the way that the systems are designed. It's not just grind. You don't want to just grind. You're not just constantly running rifts. You're not just constantly running dungeons to get the full aspect of the game. You could, just fully run dungeons, and there have been some people that did, and they kind of hit a cap. There's one of the other changes, and still wonky, is there's like an experience cap, and it's one of the ones that they had done like maybe in an effort to combat botting. But there's a certain amount of experience that you can grind out per day or per week. I'm not sure how the system exactly works, but once you hit that cap, like, your XP gains drop significantly, but you're also prevented from picking up magical items besides legendaries. So it'll never stop you from being able to pick up a legendary, but the other pieces of gear are actually like super important in character progression, because Paragon is not end-all be-all. The Paragon trees are far more interesting in Diablo Immortal than they are in Diablo 3, because you actually have choices between multiple trees. There's a Vanquisher, which is like a DPS tree, Survivor, which obviously is about survivability. There's Treasure Hunter, which is kind of like going out into the world and farming with Magic Find or increased experience gains. Gladiator, which is kind of like almost a PvP tree, because it's got a little bit of defensive, a little bit of offensive aspects to it. And then the brand new one for this alpha that no one has reached yet and won't for a little bit is the Soldier tree, which we're still waiting to see what that one does. But each of them have kind of the permanent buffs that you would come to associate with a Paragon system. You put a point in, it increases your damage, or it increases your resistance or your life. But there's also these specialization talents that you can go through and take in a Paragon tree that are only in effect when that tree is your primary. Now, you can put points into any tree that you've unlocked if you so choose, but you can only use these specialization talents when you have one tree selected. So right now I'm leveling through the game as a Vanquisher, and I have an ability that increases my it's like a 1 point skill, but it increases my attack speed by 0.5% for every monster that I kill, stacking up to 10 times. So it's one of those, as you're going through and you're grinding, either doing a rift or a dungeon where you have high mob density, you're kind of running around with like a permanent 5% increased attack speed. But it only has effect when you have that tree. There are some other ones that also increase like your damage done, like just like a 5% damage done. Another one that like increases those stacks. So there's a lot of things that are really cool and can give you some flavorful bonuses, but they're able to balance it because it only works when you have Vanquisher selected. So if you go through and instead want to do some like PvP in the Gladiator tree, you won't also be getting all of those like gnarly, super heavy DPS talents from Vanquisher. It'll be a little bit more balanced. And so then at that point, it also, as you get what would be like much further into the game, like a year into the game, and you have multiple trees that are completely maxed out, you know, your Paragon 500 or whatever it will be at that time, you know, past launch. You have all of your trees maxed out, you can still be very different in playstyle from other people of your class. You have your legendaries that you have equipped, which are going to change how your skills work on a fundamental level. But then you'll also have people that can pick and choose different Paragon trees. That even if you have that same level of utilization, the person that picks Vanquisher is going to be very different from the person that picks Survivor. You know, and you know, none of them are actual like active abilities. They're all still passives, but they're just like, you know, one of the big ones for Survivor is you get a cheat death every 2 minutes. You know, or you get ones that give you damage reduction as your health decreases. So it's things that you can get, you know, pretty tanky or pretty grindy, depending upon which direction that you go. It's a very interesting system. I really like the direction that they're going with it. I can't wait until people have actually, you know, grinded out enough. I'm not sure if we'll get to that point, you know, in this alpha. Namely, I think Leviathan in the previous alpha was the only person to have unlocked Gladiator, and he only was, you know, a couple levels past 100 to have unlocked that. And that was just 2 weeks of pure, you know, like no life grinding in the middle of like, you know, your winter vacation and such when you have the time to dedicate to that. But now with the XP caps, you know, people aren't able to replicate his experience gains from that technical alpha. So even to get to that point is going to take far longer than, you know, what he experienced then. And since we don't know how long the alpha is going to go on, we're not sure how far people are going to get into that progression. I do hope that we get Soldier unlocked, just to see what it looks like, you know, and just so that way we have more ideas. Because I have changed around a couple of the systems. I know in Vanquisher, like, they changed the positions of some of the talents, and, you know, a couple like little tweaks here and there. It's really nice, and do not confuse it with the Diablo 3 Paragon, where it's just like, you know, main stat, main stat, main stat. You are getting like permanent increases and such, but there's also a cap to it. You know, you can only get a maximum Paragon equal to the number of trees. If there are 5 trees, you know, each tree has 100 points. If there are 5 trees, there's only you cap at Paragon 500. It is a grind to get up there, for sure. But if 2 people are at Paragon 500, they have the same talent choice in selection. You know, there's no continuing to grind experience past that. You're done. You're done. But that's just one of the systems that's been implemented into the game for your character progression. You know, one of the other big ones that we had in the previous alpha and this one is also your gear. In addition to the legendaries going through and giving you like these build-defining skill changes, you have gear upgrades. And this is actually, at least at this point in the alpha, one of the most important and impactful systems to increasing your character power. Sure, you know, the Paragon can give you big damage buffs. There's like a couple of skills in Vanquisher that you get like 15 extra damage, you know, like per stat, and then that scales multiplicatively with like your offense rating and some other bonuses and such. And I'll talk a little bit more about that one in a little bit. But the fact that you get just pure stats off of the gear upgrades is huge. Because one of the things that the game uses to differentiate monster power is these things called offense rating and defense rating. And now these numbers are compared to one another when you attack a monster. And when it compares those, it gives you kind of like a multiplicative bonus if you're higher, and then a multiplicative subtraction if you're lower. So if your offense rating is higher than the monster's defense rating, you're doing scaling increased damage to it. So by just increasing your strength, or willpower, or any of your stats, regardless of what that stat does, you're getting offensive power from it, because you're effectively leveling up your character every time that you get a stat increase. And the same works for your defense rating. When a monster attacks you, it compares its offense rating to your defense rating and reduces it or increases the amount of damage that you take, depending upon if their offense rating is higher or lower, than your defense rating. And in the early grind of the game, where we're still climbing for power, and every day you're seeing a bunch of Paragon levels, a bunch of gear upgrades, and such. These things have a huge impact, because that's how it scales the difficulty for things like the challenge rifts. If you decide to be a shadow, which I'll talk a little bit more about that one later on in the show, but if you decide to be a shadow, you have the Path of Blood, that allows you to ever, increasing little kind of one-off solo challenges, and a whole bunch of other systems where you have to increase your offense and defense ratings in order to compete. And to give you an idea, for doing content that I'm overgeared for, so I'm playing around in Hell 1, which we can say is the equivalency of Torment 1, to give it an idea of what that means for the game. And my primary skill, my basic skill, hits enemies for around 10,000 to 12,000. And then last night I completed a challenge that I was not geared for. I did not have enough gear in order to go through and compete it. It was much higher level than I was, but I got carried. And so I was fighting this monster, and I was only hitting it for 100. To give you an idea of how much that offense and defense rating really matters. It's something that you can see when you're going through and doing the challenge rifts, which the challenge rift in Diablo Immortal is an interesting combination between Diablo 3's greater rifts and challenge rifts. So there's no drops, there's no experience for going through and doing a challenge rift, but if you complete a certain level of a challenge rift rating, you get a one-time reward. And that reward is crafting materials and currency. And so you're incentivized to do every single level of challenge rift that you can for those one-off rewards. And there is a daily reward, gives you some crafting materials based on the highest challenge rift that you've completed the previous day. And while they're tiny, they add up. So over time, those numbers can make a huge, huge difference for your character progression. There are also weekly rewards for the solo leaderboard and monthly rewards for the multiplayer leaderboard that can give you tons of crafting materials and currency, to incentivize you to still want to come back to the challenge rift and try and push to just the next highest level that you can. But in the challenge rift, every level that you go up increases the offense and defense rating of the monsters, as well as probably a lot of their other secondary stats. But you notice every time that the level increases, the amount of damage that you do decreases, because that difference between the two of them begins to shrink, until eventually the monsters now have a higher defense rating than what your offense is, and it will actually give you a warning that these are higher level monsters, and you start seeing your damage numbers plummet and fast. Because some of the other ones is some of those other secondary stats like armor and armor pin have different effects. You'll start seeing, depending upon how your stat allocation specifically is, you might have a little bit lower armor pin, so you'll notice that the enemies are blocking your attacks and reducing the damage a lot more as you reach that offense-defense cap, and your numbers just start dropping. But then you can go out into the world and say, if you were to just grind experience and get Paragon levels to increase your flat damage, that damage is being reduced by the multiplier of your rating differences. Whereas if you went out into the world and did a whole bunch of like quests and layers and focused more on bounties in order to get crafting materials, so that way you could upgrade the level of your gear, you would start seeing immediate returns on the amount of damage that you start doing to these mobs, and eventually that big red exclamation mark that sits in the center of your screen as you're trying to do the content will eventually just go away. And you'll notice that the fights get significantly easier as you go through and push on that. Now, I do know that is just because we're so early into the progression of the game is why that this particular system like works that way. So when you're going through and you're trying to do the content that's more difficult than what you should be doing at that moment, prioritizing offense and defense rating is one of the most important things that you can, and it makes it so that way, kind of like in the early game, you want to farm gear, you want to farm crafting materials more so than experience. And so that's some of the ones that I've been going through and doing. You still get experience, you know, you're not just sitting around waiting for items to drop from the sky. You're killing mobs, you're doing quests, you're doing bounties. You are still getting a pretty significant, you know, experience amount. Not if you were just like focusing on doing like, say, pure 4-player Countess runs on like, you know, Hell 2 or something along those lines. You know, but it is interesting that you have options for how you want to go or how you want to build your character. But those Paragon levels do go through and come back, because once the content is like kind of like flat or easy, those Paragon levels start having a much larger impact than just increasing your offense rating, because your offense rating, since it scales multiplicatively, all of those Paragon bonuses similarly scale multiplicatively as well. And against players in PvP combat, such as the Cycle of Strife, your offense ratings are kind of normalized, and so you're just doing, there's two like numbers. It'll be like, say your offense rating is 600 points higher than what it should be for your level. So against similar level creatures, you're doing 60% increased damage. You do 10% increased damage against players. You know, so those stats, I haven't been paying too close attention to see if those numbers scale. I believe they do. But so those bonuses for that offense-defense rating are shrunk significantly when going up against other players. Whereas those Paragon levels, from what we understand at the moment, however, do not. So the higher those Paragon levels, the more damage you're going to do in PvP. So it's one of those ones where the systems kind of favor maybe different types of content. Whereas, you know, obviously a blend of both, you don't want to forsake one completely for the other. A blend of both is where you want to settle on. But it is cool that you can focus on one particular aspect to increase the power of your character if it's a component that you find more interesting. It maybe not necessarily has to be more rewarding, but if it's something that you enjoy more, you can get character progression out of that. And then, you know, I do want to mention before I go into the Cycle of Strife about the Crusader. In the previous alpha, I played the Demon Hunter and I played the Monk. I had a lot of fun with both classes. I really, really enjoyed the Monk. And for the most part, I've been enjoying the Crusader more than the Monk, but I never really got to experience the quote-unquote in-game in the technical alpha on the Monk. I just got him to max level, but I didn't get any legendaries like really modify his build to get a lot of use out of it. And so I'm at the point where I might start, you know, leveling a Monk up just to go through and get it ready, and maybe just doing some bounties and other things to get him some legendaries as I grind Paragon to share with him to give him a kind of like a power boost. But the Crusader is a lot of fun. It feels so much like the Crusader from Diablo 3, but it lacks so many skills. It's really funny. They like focused in on some of the core components of what makes a Crusader, and then they cut out everything else. So, you know, like I mentioned before, you've got the shield throw, which you can use a legendary to give you the spinning shield around it. So you kind of like got your blessed hammer, you know, in that aspect. You have you don't have the laws anymore, but you do still have like what is it? I think it was Holy Conviction, where it's a group AoE buff that makes everybody immune to damage for 3 seconds. You have the Holy Banner, which increases everybody's crit rate, for a couple seconds as well. You also have, you have the Holy Steed, the Draw and Quarter, where it goes and it pulls mobs around you, and you can modify it different ways. Like there's a bombardment legendary, so that way while you're running around on the horse, it will drop the bombardment, so that you've got some iconic Crusader skills that are in there that makes it really feel like you're playing a Crusader. You're playing that class, and it's like, yeah, I'm playing a Crusader, but it's still missing some other iconic ones. Like I mentioned, there's no Laws, there's no Blessed Hammer, there's no Fist of the Heavens. It's like I kind of was wondering why. Why would you leave out some of these like really iconic abilities? And then it dawned on me, those are all skills that the Crusader shared with the Paladin. Now, in a game like Diablo 3, it works perfectly fine. Well, we just won't add a Paladin in. There's no plan to add a Paladin. The Crusader is the Paladin of Diablo 3. That's it. End of story. Doesn't matter. But with Immortal, this is going to be a living game they're going to continually add updates to in the form of new items, new zones, new act stories, and new classes. And when you go through and you look at Diablo 4, where they're bringing back the Sorceress, the Barbarian, they're, bringing back the Druid, a big-time favorite. They're even going back to Diablo 1 and bringing in the Rogue. And you just look at the reaction that people had at that. It would make sense that maybe there's people that don't want to play a Crusader. They want to play a Paladin. How do you differentiate the two classes? You kind of have to go through and focus on some things, even though they fill a similar niche. That there's a lot of room that you can, change about them. And so they left auras, Fist of the Heavens. They left Blessed Hammer. They left those abilities on the table should they ever want to go through, pick up, and make a Paladin, that you've got all of these iconic Paladin skills. They were Paladin skills the first time, not for the Crusader. And they're giving you that opportunity to that one day we could introduce a Paladin, and we've got the selection of skills that we can still go through and do that will make it feel a lot different, from how the Crusader played. And it's just like, it's honestly, it's beautiful. It's like forward thinking, like class design like that, to make sure that they are leaving themselves room to grow and expand the roster with previous classes, from the franchise. I'm sure that eventually they'll want to go through and do their own thing, make their own classes, even though, there's a pretty big argument that the classes that they're doing so far, even like the Crusader and the Monk, are hugely, they're the same but different. Like the Monk with the lashing, with the lash kick that can like jump off walls, when you go through and use the skill, like it's like, okay, this is what a Monk legit would do. When you go through and you like dash kick into a wall, he just immediately flips and dash kicks back in the opposite direction. It is such like a Monk thing. You don't question it, even though the D3 Monk never did it. It's like, this is purely what I would expect from this class. And so it's just amazing, what they're going through and really building upon in narrowing down and really focusing on those class fantasies with what they've made so far. And I cannot wait to see what they have in mind for the Necromancer, and I can't wait to see what the team does in the future. I know the game isn't even released yet, but it's just that little aspect of going through and looking at the Crusader, like, I could be completely off, and it's just there's some dev back there sitting at Blizzard that's like, oh no, we didn't think of that, but that's a good idea. I could be completely off, but I want to say that these things are specifically intentional, to leave room on the table for a Paladin. Not confirming that a Paladin is coming, but just, they had to have had a meeting somewhere that was like, what can we build on for the Crusader? And someone's like, well, what if we want to add a Paladin? And what can they do to break out those skills? They don't have to design anything for a Paladin yet, but they just have to like not give certain skills to the Crusader. And so that excites me. That excites me that there's already, it looks like, a lot of, you know, future forward planning for the game before we're even launching. And of course, with that out of the way, I do want to get into the cycle of strife and the reason for the terribly cringe singing at the beginning of the episode. The cycle of strife is kind of like their PvP system that they're introducing into Diablo Immortal, and as a general like top-down view, you've got two different warring factions with like the neutral party in between. You have your immortals and your shadows with the neutral adventurers. Everybody starts as an adventurer, and if you choose, you can become a shadow. And then the shadows fight the immortals, and then the immortals in the story are like kind of like the elite protectors of Sanctuary, which have been charged with an ancient pledge to you know, protect Sanctuary from the forces of hell, you know, and any invasion, you know, from the you know, the armies of demons. They've done a great job over the years. Why haven't they? And you know, it's one of those ones where it's like, it is in and of itself designed to be cyclical, like the name would entail. When you start, as it is in the alpha right now, there are no immortals. It's an NPC faction of immortals, so everybody is just choosing to be an adventurer or choosing to be a shadow. If you choose to be a shadow, you get a ton of buffs. It opens up content that only shadows can play. You've got that solo feature, the Path of Blood, that I mentioned, which is a bunch of like little like one-off like little monster combinations where it's just like, you know, kill all the monsters in the room. And there'll be like some like monster combos where they'll have like maybe like a summoner guy that makes them immune and such. And every 5 levels is a boss with some different mechanics and such, and very limited play areas, and you can't use potions. So you actually do have to kind of think about, as you get higher in difficulty, you got to think about your gear, you have to think about your build, positioning and such in order to go through and progress. You know, or you can just like overgear it and kill through everything. But that slows down eventually. And it rewards you with marks to increase your shadow rank. And you know, as your shadow rank increases, you get a flat damage and defense buff against other players. It's specifically designed for like PvP in mind. But it also unlocks like other bonuses. You know, you can get honor, which is a currency in the game to buy specific mats and things like that. But it's one of those like you just have like kind of like this avenue of character progression through the shadow system. But eventually it's designed so that way you take on the immortals, because as the shadows build in power, they progress through these stages of the cycle of strife, and these stages are all garnered around specifically the activities of the shadows as they complete those Path of Bloods, as they complete contracts, which are elongated bounties with story elements to them, and as they go through and complete, like they can raid the vault, they can raid the stores of the immortals, and I'll explain a little bit more about that one. And as they do all these things, they gain, you know, the marks, which increases your own rank within the shadows, but it also increases the overall progression of the shadows in the cycle of strife as they attempt to overthrow the immortals. Eventually, they will reach a point that they are capable of challenging the immortals, and you unlock a weekly capability of having the top 10 dark houses, which is kind of like the shadow clans. The top 10 dark houses are capable of fighting, you know, the immortals. And so each house gets to nominate 8 people to go through and fight the immortals. And then the immortals have to, you know, select 80 people to defend. And so it's these 10 8v8 matches that go through. And if there's a tie, the immortals win. And the shadows have to win. So the shadows basically have to win, you know, like 6 out of the 10 matches in order to, you know, overthrow. And if they do that, the top ranked dark house becomes the new immortals. And then the immortals themselves have a huge set of bonuses. You know, they have their own tab at the honor vendor. So there's certain things from the honor vendor. You can buy things like legendary crests that you can use in rifts in order to get legendary gems. You can buy like there's like, I think, weekly pieces of legendary gear that you can buy, monthly pieces of legendary gems that you can buy, other things are like daily limits, like charms, crafting materials, a whole bunch of stuff that everyone has access to. And then the Immortals just have a whole separate tab of that. So like the Immortals can buy 2 legendaries a week, 2 legendary crests a week. They can buy 2 of the legendary gems a month. They've got double of everything, and only they have access to it. They get access, just as the Shadows had their own, special content, the Immortals have their own special content that they can do. One of the big ones being, they mentioned in the BlizzCon line about there was going to be raids in Diablo Immortal. Well, the first raid that's being unlocked is one that only the Immortals can play in. And it's called Kion's Ordeal. And it's a 48-player raid where 4 12-player groups have to go down these dungeon wings and take on these bosses. There's a 30-minute timer, and all of the bosses have to be killed simultaneously. You'll see the indicator on your screen. No one's an Immortal, so no one's seen what it looks like yet. But there'll be health indicators of the bosses and such. You kind of have to time it in order to kill all of them at the same time. It has massive rewards if you manage to go through and defeat this raid, and then also it will give all of the Immortals as well as the adventurers a buff that gives them greater rewards for running Elder Rifts. If they don't do it, or if they fail the raid, the Shadows get the buff. Then as they go through and they do their little separate content and such, they build up their vault, and so they get gear from the raid and other things that go and build up their currency called Essentia and such. And as the vault increases, it will unlock different weekly rewards that then the officers of the Immortal can then disseminate out to them. I believe all of the Immortals get some sort of buff or at least reward for just being there weekly. And then also adventurers, I believe, get some sort of bonus depending upon how well the Immortals did every week. So the adventurers get stuff passively. Adventurers get a special perk that they can buy a currency that allows them to level up. I completely forgot to talk about the Heliquary. I even have it in the show notes. I just completely skipped it. But yeah, so there's this other in-game content that's in there called the Heliquary, where you get to unlock these boss adventures, and it's just another progression system. As you level it up, you get higher increasing offense defense ratings, but then you can do these really powerful, these really challenging boss encounters, and they're raid boss encounters. Because you're fighting this demon and he's dropping stones. The cavern ceiling is dropping on the ground. You have to avoid the blast, but then he'll go through and do this massive AoE, so you have to hide behind the rocks in order to not be one shot by his AoE and such. So it's showing a lot of potential that they understand raid mechanics for big games say Final Fantasy 14 or World of Warcraft. And it's kind of that's just a small little indicator that might be some of the things that we have to look forward to in raids. But if you're an adventurer, you get to level up because you get currency for it. Everybody is limited to 12 per day from doing bounties. But then if you're an adventurer, you can buy 6 additional. So you get 50% increased acquisition or leveling up of your Heliquary as staying an adventurer. Plus you get a whole bunch of just passive bonuses if the Immortals do well. So the adventurer is just kind of I'm going through doing my own thing. And they just purely benefit. They're I'm not gonna worry about being a shadow. I'm just gonna go through and let the Immortals do things. And then the Immortals, when they go through and do group content, you have the Eternal Crown, and you have the lieutenants that all get these special bonuses that they have their own little crowns. And so you've got these AoE stat buffs and defensive buffs that all of these people are giving whenever they're in a party. So when you're going through and you're doing the raid, this particular boss might just be really harsh, so we're gonna give the guy that gives the bonus armor in that particular wing of the raid, so to make sure that they survive. Or this one has a ton of health, so we need to have the person that gives say the crit buff to that one. And then they can also take that into PvP. So when you're going through and you're doing, that Rite of Exile in the Cycle of Strife, when the Shadows have to try and overthrow the Immortals have just like these passive buffs for their whole team. They're just like, no. And so when it starts off, the Immortals are probably just going to be like way overpowered. One, they were the best Shadows to start with, so they were already like the best of the best. Then they became the Immortals, and they get even more bonuses, even more access to gear and such. So they get like super increased rewards and such. But the Shadows, they, as time goes on, get continual increased bonuses. As they increase their rank, they're just getting more passive damage and defense to keep up with those Immortal bonuses. And as the Cycle of Strife continues, as the Shadows progress in their goals, they get ever-increasing bonuses in the Rite of Exile. So eventually it'll just be to the point that the Shadows are just so overpowered because of stat inflation that the Immortals just can't keep up. Eventually the Mortals will fall and the crown will pass on, and then the cycle starts over. Because once the new Immortals are crowned, you lose like all of the houses, like lose all of their ranks, all their abilities, and you have to start over from scratch, I think. Because it wouldn't really make much sense for the Shadows to just be already like that powerful, because then, well, we just beat you before, and it's not like you're going to be all that much more powerful than us, because like next week we'll just step in and kick your ass. So the Cycle of Strife will reset, and you have to build your way back up to being able to challenge the Immortals. So no Immortal is going to reign forever. It's going to be one of those ones where it's never going to be fully impossible for the Shadows to win. It's not like you're ever going to run into an instance where everyone's like, oh, these Immortals are untouchable, let's just everyone be an adventurer and benefit. Eventually the Shadows will just be like, well, we've got like 80% extra damage and take 80% less damage from players in PvP. We can't lose. Like, it's 4v8. We can't lose at this point. It doesn't matter. Eventually it will get to that point. And it'll be interesting how many cycles we're going to go through on the alpha, because right now it's been 1 week and we've hit the showdown. So we already have unlocked the Path of Exile, or Rite of Exile, sorry. And so this Sunday, the first Immortals are going to be crowned. That should be pretty cool. I would definitely keep an eye on Twitch. I'm sure some of the big names are going to be going through and streaming that. I hope that I can get in there, because you can only send like the top 8 people per house. And right now I'm hovering at like, I'm in Ascension with like Rax, Echo Hack, Facefoot, and a lot of like the really big grinders. So I've got some stiff competition, but I'm like right there. I'm like rank 6 or 7. I'm sitting at the bottom end. I want to be up there, but dang, work getting in the way. So I'm keeping myself as progressed as I can, and I will probably be spending Saturday, if I am not, lying sick in bed because I get my second vaccination on Friday. But I'm hoping Saturday I'm going to be able to just sit back and grind all day long, just so that way I can solidify, my placement in the Dark House and earn my right to go through and challenge with the Immortals. Which I don't know if they're actually going to be like NPCs, or if we just like win by default because there are no Immortals. I'm not sure. But I'm hoping that we at least get to go through and do it. And I'm hoping that we also get to be the top Dark House, so that way we can become Immortals, because that just would be cool. Who doesn't want to be, the Immortal? Because you get memorialized. There's, your names are written on like the wall of like the wall of honor. The leader of the Immortals gets a statue in Westmarch, and him and his lieutenants are like immortalized, on like the I think it was the Wall of Memory. And so like each group of Immortals with the leader and the 4 lieutenants will always be viewable. Like you'll be able to go back like 3 years and see who the first Immortal was. So you'll always be remembered, and that's just like badass. I would love to be able to get in there and do stuff like that. So we'll see. But I'm really, really excited for how like the system is going to go through and play out. And this is just PvP. Like, this isn't even like the real end game. Like, this is just another activity that you can go through and do, because we haven't hit level 60 yet. We haven't seen what there is. Like, sure, right now the only PvP content is limited just to Immortals behind, a PvP block that not everybody wants to PvP and what have you. But that's just what they're testing right now. We haven't gotten to max level, so we haven't seen what the actual like in-game raids and things like that are going to be for the game, or what type of content that there is. Like, even on the UI in the game, there's a little tab for all of like your different mechanics, your skills, your paragon, like the codex, your shadows tab, all that stuff. There's an unused one. And now I don't that could of course just be like the Immortal tab, but there could be one more like other in-game system in there, like in addition to the Heliquary that you have in order to progress your character. It's like the more little knobs and buttons that you have in order to manipulate your character power and your build and your loadout is just cool. Like, who cares if there's cookie cutters, just because the fact that you've got the option to be different if you want to try, the progression system that you want to do, or just progress by doing content that you want to do or you find fun. And then, like, with the cycle of Strife itself, there is, like, a lore and story behind it. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we will be talking about some of the lore implications for Immortal. I will save that one, for the end, because there's implications, with what all this new stuff, has to offer. But I'm super excited by all of it. I can't wait. Like, if you've listened to my streams or the after show, or watch watch me talk on Twitter, I enjoy PvP. I really like PvP. It's one of my favorite things to do in World of Warcraft, and so I'm looking forward to that in Diablo Immortal, having a good Diablo PvP system that I can go through and like test my mettle against others. So I'm looking forward to it. I haven't had a chance to actually PvP in the game yet, because there is like a limited number of people, and you just have to like be at the battleground to queue for it. Though it seems that they're changing that system on the alpha temporarily, so that way the battleground is only available for certain times, so that way if you want to try it, it's just like, oh yeah, the battleground's open for 2 hours starting at 8 o'clock, so go now. Like, and so that way everyone will go when they want a PvP, so that way we can try it out for the first time. Just to see how it works. Because like the PvP out in Bielfen, it's usually like there's one 4-player group, and then everyone else is by themselves, and so the 4 players like stomp on everybody. And so that's not what I would consider like real PvP, as opposed to like something like a battleground or actually like team deathmatch and such. So can't wait. Looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. And yeah, like that's kind of like some of like the just like the general big idea concepts. I do want to kind of like in future episodes like narrow in on one specific like feature or system, because like there's so much to talk about with stats and like how the stat system works. There's so much to talk about, like the Heliquary, Paragon, all of other stuff. So I'll be doing some breakdowns later on with future episodes, since we are gonna safely have the alpha for a while, and I'll see if I go to weekly episodes while the alpha's in place. We'll see how my workload goes, and in worst case scenario, I might just stream on Wednesdays instead of doing episodes. We'll see. But as I mentioned, to close out the episode, I do want to talk about the lore. And as we knew going into Diablo Immortal, it takes place 5 years after the events of Diablo 2, and we're tasked with going and hunting down shards of the World Stone that have been corrupted by Baal and have been thrown around Sanctuary, and are being like tiny sources of corruption, kind of like polluting Sanctuary with demonic essence. In the previous technical alpha, we collected a couple of these shards, which were being collected by various entities across Sanctuary. A couple were, trying to collect them for Skarn, who's kind of being billed as the big bad guy of the game. He's one of Diablo's lieutenants. He's the Lord of Damnation. And he is, he's got his Cult of Damnation, which has been trying to go through and get some of these shards of the World Stone, as he's attempting to resurrect, his lord, Diablo. And that is obviously no good. We don't want Diablo getting resurrected, so we're trying to stop that from happening. They're also like the Countess and such, which are just like finding these Worldstone shards and using their power in order to, further their own like dastardly goals. Because these are still, I've talked at lengths about the Worldstone and how this has the power to create and shape worlds. Like these little tiny, think of each one of these little tiny shards, it's like an infinity gem in terms like their powers and capabilities. They're like, potentially even just a shard is limitless in what it could do. And they're all have been corrupted by Baal, and so we're trying to destroy these. And even the strongest Herodic rituals that Cain had discovered can't even touch or phase them. And through the course of the story, we have to find an angelic weapon, because like these, the weapons of the high heavens and probably the burning hells as well are the only things that are capable of shaping or damaging these shards. And so we go out to try and find, this angelic piece, and we kind of ended there in the previous alpha. Now we're taking it further, where we've successfully destroyed a couple of shards of the Worldstone, and we're now, just kind of like following breadcrumbs to get more. And now this takes us, into the mountain ranges, into Mount Xavian, where we get to go and see the monks to find another shard of the Worldstone. And this one had actually been found years prior by the monks, and they recognized its power and hid it, guarded in the monastery. And as you go into the zone, like, you kind of get the monk from, you don't actually get to meet the monk from Diablo 3, but they feel like the monks from Diablo 3, because they're like, the town guard, when you get there, is like, oh, the monastery sent a monk? We thought it was an acolyte. Like, these guys are one-man armies. And so the monk that you meet up with, and she honestly does that. You have to defend the fort from an onslaught of Khazra, the goatmen. And like you and a couple of guardsmen fight on one side, and she's just by herself fighting an endless onslaught of Khazra coming in from the other. And, so it's like, well, these are badasses. What safer place really could there be for this Worldstone shard than in a monastery full, of people of these capabilities? But then that's when we find that there is a monk that had been exiled because he kind of like lost his way. His brother had died and he didn't take it well, and so he kind of like blamed the world and everything. He's been seeking for some way to bring his brother back to life. And as you progress through the story, you learn that Skarn kind of whispered in his ear saying that he would reunite him with his brother should he bring him this Worldstone shard. And so he's able to go and conduct a whole bunch of like terrible rituals. He resurrects like the corpses of long dead monks in order to go through and attack the monastery, with he himself just being, kind of like a monk to begin with and that level of power, but then juiced up with some, because he's been kind of like chosen by this Lord of Hell. And so he's, pumped up on demonic energies, is able to overthrow, get the shard, and we then have to hunt him down. And that takes us to Mount Shesharon, because he's going and taking the Worldstone shard to the scar in the world where the Worldstone once laid, in order to try and deliver this piece of the Worldstone, to his master. And this is where we go through and we meet not a witch doctor, but someone of the Umbaru people, and they're familiar with the Unformed lands. We have to like travel into like the realm of the dead in order to hunt him down. And because the monk like uses the Worldstone in order to like cross that barrier, and so we're now starting to see something that we kind of saw in Diablo 3 with like the Shadow Realm and Zoltan Kuhl's archives. And it's something that was talked about, in like the Witch Doctor lore. It's the Unformed lands, where you have kind of like this pristine world where the dead go, where the souls travel to and such. And now we're starting to see a little bit more of that. They're not taking it like super high fantasy like World of Warcraft, where it's like different planes of existence and you're like traveling to effectively like other planets, even though that honestly does exist inside Diablo 3, but that's like heaven, hell, type stuff. But like these other planes, it feels far more like Dungeons and Dragons, where you're kind of like stepping into like, the Shadow Realm or the Astral Plane. You're just kind of like, it's the same world, but just like a step out of phase. So you're able to interact with like kind of like the souls of these dead barbarians, which are lingering in place because they failed in their task. Not only did they fail to defend Shesharon, they failed to defend Mount Ariat. The Worldstone, their sacred charge, has been destroyed. They're broken people, and so their souls are languishing along the battlefields up the slope of the mountain, and they can't pass on. And so you have to like kind of like try and bring them calm, give them honorable burials and such on your way up in order to earn the right to pass into, kind of like the realm of the dead to hunt after the monk. And then once you go through and get there, you're like just a little bit too late, and he manages to hand off the world stone to Skarn. And while you're going through and fighting, this monk, Skarn escapes. And so that's kind of like where the story ends. You defeat the monk, but now you have to go and hunt down Scar, and he's escaped to hell. Oh, well, I wonder what we're going to be doing for the next 5 levels. That 55 to 60 storyline, well, pretty much at that point is confirmed. Well, we're going to hell, just like any proper Diablo game, right? And so we hunt him down, and that's where we're headed. It's going to be like this big major showdown, and that's going to be kind of like the question: what happens from there? We see all the concept art of Diablo and kind of like that half resurrected stage. Is Skarn kind of going to be like the end cap of the story? We fight him in like some big massive dungeon, and then like this half resurrected like flesh and bone Diablo, like the first raid. Are we going to have to go through and like fight other lords of hell? What else is there to go through and tantalize us with these components, these stories? And it's really cool. It's really nice to see like the impact of the destruction of the World Stone has had on Sanctuary. With it like weakening barriers, and so now some like long imprisoned Nephilim are now able to escape their prisons. Demons are able to more freely, scour the world. The different like the Khazra clans and things are being riled up. You have these chaos mutations and stuff that are going through, the evils and parts of the world because of these world stone shards are just emanating evil out into everywhere that they exist. It's making things kind of like a little bit dire, that you should have this like kind of like almost aura of celebration that maybe not everybody in the world would know that they almost died because, some of the demon lords were taking over and we're corrupting like the heart of the world. But it's like one of those, it's like kind of like the freest Sanctuary has been, for a few hundred years outside of the influence, of the lords of hell. And but now there's some sinister, machinations that are going on in the background behind the scenes. And that's just like the main storyline. Like when you're going through and traveling, we got to see a little peek of, say, Vala in the technical alpha, but now she actually has like a whole dungeon. Like it's like a one-off story dungeon, so it's not something that you can repeat, but you get to go through and see, Vala get like assaulted by a demon and, plagued by nightmares, and you get to relive, the steps that made Vala go to, become a demon hunter. It does basically completely reuse like the story of what was it? I think it's Hatred and Discipline, the story that introduced Vala in the Heroes Rise, Darkness Falls, from when Diablo 3 first came out. So it reuses a lot of the elements of like the nightmares, the hitting Vala with all of her fears, from her childhood, the death of her parents, the death of her sister, and such. But you actually get to go through and like relive that alongside her. And it isn't quite at that same level because she kind of fails the test, and only with the help of the player character is she able to actually like succeed against this powerful demon. And so she, and even like her master Josen is like kind of like, well, you're not quite there yet, you're not quite a demon hunter, but you're getting close. You showed some talent now. You're being able to temper your hatred with some discipline. But before, she's all just pure Rambo. Let's just go in, crossbows blazing, kill everything, with no real regard to what's the implications of what it is that you're fighting and facing. So it's nice going through and seeing some of like those story elements, or even just like the little inclusion, of someone of the Umbaru. Even it's like no, I'm not a witch doctor, but yeah, the land of the dead, I know what you're talking about. It's like little tiny things like that, because yeah, not everybody not every single person of the Umbaro is a witch doctor. It's just like, I would love it if like the first person that we meet from Scovos isn't an Amazon, because not everybody on Scovos is an Amazon. There's going to be carpenters and painters and stuff like that. Sure, they are a very they're like the barbarians, a very militia and warlike people, so I'm pretty sure that everybody knows how to use a spear and fire a bow. But that doesn't mean that every single one of them is, a righteous ass kicker for the light. As cool as that kind of sounds now that I'm saying it out loud. But it's nice just seeing like the world continue to be fleshed out, with those little tiny aspects. And even as you go through and you're playing the zones, like I mentioned, those like little quests that you can get that help build up like the conflicts. The Shasara Sea, one of my favorite zones, because it's kind of like pseudo Egyptian in its theme. After you go through and you do the storyline, you help this faction called the Amber Blades recover an artifact that will give them like kind of like claim leadership of that area, so that way they can attempt to try and rebuild that area that had been devastated hundreds of years ago. You have a couple of quests where they're just like, oh hey, that faction, the Sand Scorpions that you helped us out against, well, we think there's a traitor among us. We need you to go through and try and root out who it is. You have to find like some lost patrols of people that got captured by Lucani, things of that nature. So it's things that they're like, sure, this is really just like a little in-game event to be rewarded with some enchanted dust to upgrade your gear. But if you stop for a second to go through and look at it, they're building upon the story that was set in place, in those areas. There's one that I want to know more about. That's like, I think it's the Priest of Dusk that happens in like the Ashwold Cemetery. There's a little event that goes through and happens, and it spawns a unique mob where you have these priests that are praying at an altar. They're called the Priests of Dusk, and they're trying to bring about the eternal night. And at the end of it, they actually like summon their lord. The lord, I think it's like the Lord of Dusk, and it's just like a phantom. It's the undead, but you kill him. But it's like there's not a lot of story behind like what exactly it is, and it's just like, I want to know more. I want to know more about this one. Where's the lore entry on this? And then we have like the bestiary, which is kind of like a catalog that gives you like records of everything that you've killed. At the moment, there's no lore entries in the book, but I'm hoping that we will eventually get some things, because there's some like bosses and uniques and such that are in the game that I would love to know more about. Like what is this? Like, who is this? Like, where do they come from? What are their being? And all this other types of stuff. But the game is really set up that it's not just like a mobile. It's not just like a quick release mobile game. This is like full on everything that you'd expect, from a Blizzard title, from like the story progression and everything. So you've got a lot of elements. I haven't come across it, but there's like contracts that even mention like the Amazon Cassia from Diablo 2 that you're like hunting down. It's like, oh yeah, I got tips on this artifact. It's like this spear, that like this powerful Amazon used on the slopes of Area. It's kind of like giving those direct indicators that yeah, this is like the real deal, when in terms of, like the story and such. So it's everything that I had hoped that from the game in terms of story. It's really delivering on that promise of one, offering like a unique new story set in the world of Diablo, but just pushing the borders. Like, we've seen the maps of Sanctuary, for decades, but it's always been like, well, what's in that area? Where is that? We've heard like the stories of the monks and Yvgarad and such, but now we actually get to see like their architecture. We get to see like the people and their clothing and things. We get to like expand and build upon like these cultures through like just little tiny quests and dialogue. Like the monks inhabit this area that you also have like shrines to Fallen Zakarum, because like the Zakarum for years tried to wage war against the monks and got their asses kicked. So of course there's like these old burial grounds for the Zakarum paladins all over the place. So it's little things like that just make a lot of sense. It really makes it feel as if they have an understanding of the world and everything like belongs someplace. Everything, feels as if it is in its rightful area. It just clicks. It feels good. And then like the last thing is the cycle of strife itself has a story behind it, and this one builds upon like just like a little one-off mention. So back, in the ancient times, one of the firstborn, Deodessa, and the firstborn are the first generation of Nephilim. Probably some of the most powerful beings, to have ever walked Sanctuary. Created this very powerful artifact called, was it the Eternal Crown? Yes, the Eternal Crown. And she gave to her son Kion, so that way he would be imbued with this power of her creation in order to protect Sanctuary. That it was like she recognized the threat that the burning hells would have to Sanctuary, and so tasked him that you need to be on guard. You always need to be here to defend Sanctuary, from the forces of hell should they ever come, because their corrupting influence knows no bounds, and they will never stop once they learn what power exists in this place. But to ensure that Kion would never falter, she also entrusted a task to her daughter, Akiba. And Akiba's task was to become a shadow. While she would never shine, such as her son did, she always had to keep an eye and make sure that she would watch him from the shadows. Because should he ever falter, should he ever, misstep, stray from the path, should he become corrupted by the forces of hell that he's trying to fight against, or be tempted to use his power for something other than the defense of Sanctuary, she had to end him. And then she would have to go through and take up the Eternal Crown in order to defend Sanctuary. Because only the best, only the strongest should be the ones to go through and, have that protection, from the burning hells. Because only the best, only the strongest would be capable of fighting against the corrupting influence from hell, but no one would be able to hold that position forever. And thus began the cycle of strife. That it was this ever, increase, is just kind of like this ever looping cycle of immortals growing in strength and power, and either eventually becoming complacent, being corrupted, or just being surpassed in their capabilities by the shadows that were tasked with watching them. And so the shadows aren't just sitting back, they're testing them. They're always going through and making sure that they are in fact the ones that are, the creme de la creme, that they are the very best, like no one ever was. And eventually, if the shadows see an opportunity that they've faltered, spring, go through, fight the immortals, and in a bloody battle, take the crown. And this is something that has just been going on for generations and generations. And now that aspect in the story sounds really cool. It's going through and taking Deodessa, who is just a one-off-handed mention in a lore entry in Diablo 3 from one of Rakkus' journals when he was exploring Corvus. Because Deodessa was also the one that built Corvus, the Nephilim city that was buried underneath Westmarch. And so you have this character that they're just taking and building upon. They could have just said some other person, some other name, but it's cool that it's no, she's the builder. She was someone that is that we can make important. We don't have to create a new character when we just have this name that we can build upon and create lore for, and really begin to flesh out this person. And it's cool that you have this person that was kind of going through and doing things. She was building cities for the Nephilim. She was building artifacts of great power for the Nephilim, as well as having kind of a motherly care of wanting to make sure that Sanctuary is protected. They haven't really talked about how it all fits into the meta-narrative or where the timeline of all these things happen, but you'd have to think that for her to have a son and a daughter, the second generation of Nephilim would have to have occurred after the Scouring. So all of the angels and demons have been, destroyed from Sanctuary. Deodessa, at least at that point, has firsthand witnessed the battle between, Lilith and Anarius and such, and the capabilities that either side represents. to want to create that eternal crown and task her son with that. But it also is a place where like the Nephilim, they're living in underground cities, like in fear, of Anarius. And so they're kind of like just keeping a watchful eye on things, like in the shadows and secrecy and such. And so it would kind of like make sense that like this is like a super group of the elitist of the elite, the best of the best, and then the shadows kind of like following them around, always testing them, always there, always watching. That the immortals might not necessarily really be aware of that they're there, being tested and such. But then it begins to kind of break down a little bit as it kind of like goes through in the way that they implement it in the game, and there's some aspects that I'm not too fond of, and that's where like the concept's all cool and all of that, but where were the immortals the whole time? Like if this like faction exists, why wouldn't Tyrael have entrusted the immortals with the task of hunting down the primevals instead of having to create the Herodrum? It creates some like little inconsistencies, but maybe they're a secret society and such, and so Tyrael didn't even really know that either of these factions existed. That's why he made the Herodrum. Or maybe they were in like the downturn. They just had been so long that none of this stuff had existed, and maybe the immortals are only just now like being rediscovered, and someone found the Eternal Crown. And it's like, no, they've kind of always been there. They've always been around. And no, they're not a secret society, because there's a literal kid, there's a child in Westmarch that's like, I want to be an immortal when I grow up. And it's just like, so like the immortals are like the Saturday morning superheroes in Sanctuary? Like, what? Huh? Like, just like, and then you start going through and doing like the Shadows contracts, and it's just like, oh yeah, the rogues. Yeah, the rogues, they're like the corrupted rogue faction over in the Darkwoods. Yeah, they captured a couple of immortals, and they know that they're immortals. They're not just some dude. We're holding them because we know that they've got like a lot of like cool stuff. And it's just like, what? Huh? If everybody knows about the immortals, then like, wouldn't everybody know that the immortals are there to like protect us from hell? Then if like everybody knows that the immortals are there and the immortals are there to protect us from hell, then why are people like shocked that like demons exist? It's like the concept and everything is like cool, but it starts breaking down, once you start applying it into like the meta narrative of the game. And I get it, sometimes things are just there for like the game, and it's for game mechanics and such. And I get that. But I feel as if it could have been implemented a little bit better, so that way not everybody, because you can take those same things and it's like, oh yeah, the rogues grabbed this traitor because he had a caravan hoping to like learn more. But you as the Shadow know, oh, he's actually an immortal. And so I've got to go through and kill this guy before the rogues figure out who he is or what he is. Would have been my take on it, because you're kind of like having to go through and like protect that secrecy, of the faction and such. But I don't know if it's something that we're too late to go through and change that story, change that narrative, but it I don't know. It's like, it sucks because it is so cool, but it doesn't fit, the Diablo story. Wouldn't the immortals wouldn't they have like rise to try and fight Malthael, or wouldn't they have like hunted down like freaking like the Zakarum priests are going through and quoting the prophecy of the end of days? Wouldn't the immortals have all gone through and like descended upon New Tristram, when Tyrael fell to the earth and started the whole thing for Diablo 3? Wouldn't the Immortals like showing up once rumors of, the Dark Wanderer, going through and walking around. Excuse me. I don't know. It doesn't fit, it just like doesn't fit. There's a couple of ways that you could have worked it to make it work, and they didn't take any of those avenues. But you can just kind of like take it for what it is, and there's the Immortals aren't in Diablo 3, so maybe it's just kind of like a non-canon like story inclusion and such, and that the Immortals themselves in the shadows did actually like die off during like one of the events. You could easily go through and say that happened when you go into Diablo 4. Like, Diablo 4 doesn't necessarily, even though we have this new feature and these new factions, Diablo 4 doesn't have to use the Immortals in the shadows, because you can easily just say freaking 90% of all humans died on Sanctuary during Malthael's attack. All of the Immortals in the shadows got killed during those events. That's it. They're broken. They're done. You could still use like the Eternal Crown as like an in-game item, or something like that. Like, that would make it for a pretty awesome unique, like in Diablo 4, and kind of show the tie-in between them and such. But yeah, I'll be interested in seeing, because right now, like, there's a little bit of the lore that they have on the website, and then in the game, like, as you do like the contracts, you learn a little bit more about the shadows, a little bit more about like the Immortals, by extension, as well as there's like little story plot elements that you have to go through as you unlock, the different things to become a shadow, and it introduces you to these concepts and these stories, of Kion and Akiba, Diadessa's mission, and like the eternal charge that they've had, throughout the ages and such. So it goes through and kind of gives you the kind of like the building up of those components and such. But we'll have to see if they expand on it further. Maybe in future Cycle of Strifes or updates to the Cycle of Strifes, they might give you a little bit more story. Or hell, even with like the Zoltan Kuhl archives. I talked about this on the show previously. Zoltan Kuhl's archives of being able to like relive past memories. I'm sure that there's going to be ways that you can go through and factor it in that you can relive, maybe that fight between Kion and Akiba, that where Kion fell and she had to like take his place and take up the crown. Maybe you can find out what the falling out was or what happened, to them. You do have like this element of going back in time and seeing these stories as they occurred without changing them. I'm fine with time travel if you don't start changing, storylines and such, but those are things that I'm definitely interested in going and finding and seeing what they do. But yeah. It sucks to kind of end on a negative note, but I needed to be able to just have like time to like work it through like the whole process and everything, for the Cycle of Strife. I like the direction that they're going with the story. I just don't like how it fits into the narrative of the game as a whole. But that's one of those ones where it's like, it's a prequel to Diablo 3, so you're like going back in time to add in events in between like different titles, and that's stuff like that always happens. Like Star Wars, the Clone Wars were 40 years prior, or 20 years prior. They're like the Clone Wars, they were like 20 years prior to the events of the original trilogy, and everybody was like, oh, what's the Clone Wars? What's a Jedi? It's like no one knows what a Jedi is. We fucking were running around the whole goddamn galaxy 20 years ago. What do you mean no one knows what a Jedi is? So there, it's just things that kind of like can break certain meta narratives, and you just kind of have to pick and choose what you want and maybe what they carry forward with future stories and such. So we can take it for what it is at the moment and see what they do with the story as it goes forward. But with that will bring us a close to this particular episode. And if you liked what you found, liked listening to me rant, about story and things like that, for a while, by all means, go through, give us a follow, whether you're, watching us live on Twitch. You can also catch the shows on YouTube. You just do a search for Westmarch Workshop or on the BlizzPro channel. You can even go through, find us. We're on all the podcasting platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all those places that you find podcasts. You can find the episode. And of course, I stream here live every other Wednesday night at twitch.tv/BlizzPro, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. You can follow the show on Twitter at the WM Workshop for ideas of when I go live. I'll go through and tweet out the episodes. As we have more things to talk about, a lot of things to discuss with the ongoing alpha, I might be going back to weekly episodes, but just keep an eye on Twitter, and I'll let you know depending on how things go. I don't want to fully commit to it just because it's been really hectic at work lately, and I won't know if I have the time or the energy in order to do it, but we'll see. You can also follow myself personally. I'm at Neinball Gamer on Twitter, and then I also have been going and streaming, though I might not be streaming this weekend depending upon my reaction. Like I said, I'm getting my second Pfizer shot on Friday, and a lot of people just have the wind knocked out of them for a day or two afterwards. So we'll see if I have the energy to stream on Friday or Saturday this weekend. I will be playing nonetheless, grinding as much as I can. I'll see if I can go through and hop on the stream, and you can find me over at twitch.tv/Neinball. I know Longshot's going to hold me to that one. I can already feel him typing in chat about me and streaming. But I have actually streamed. I can't even make the once a year joke because I've streamed for 4 days this past weekend. I look forward to doing it some more. I've really been enjoying the game, and it's been just fun having a new game to go through and grind for. My fingers from holding the phone have been getting a bit achy, but I got a controller coming in for Amazon to not a controller for the actual phone, but it's like a case, so it just gives you kind of like the controller grip to play on the phone. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully that will alleviate some of the finger aches for holding the phone for 8 hours at a time, going through and playing. But yeah, with that, I will catch you all next time. And thank you again for going through and joining me on this episode. And I will see you all later.